We are here with a very, very special guest as we talk about 2 years since Sandy hit and the emotions that go on with that. We have an amazing guest with us. Sam Samarelli is here. Sam, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Sam has been everything from Sandy on, from a hero to a villain. He was called the hero of Seaside by Bruce Springsteen, as a matter of fact. A man on the front lines when Sandy hit, a man responsible for so many big decisions that happened at the beginning of Sandy and up until this day, so many emotions that have come your way. Welcome, first of all. Tell everybody your story that started right around the time of Sandy.
Well, it was a little bit prior to Sandy. As everybody knows, Hurricane Irene came on to the coast about a month previous, which put everybody in a tailspin that it really became nothing of a hurricane, and they evacuated for no reason. So then a month later, Sandy came into light about a week before I started preparing for it, as I prepared for Irene, but the people didn't heed the warning. At that point in time, I had prepared the week before, as I said, fueling the vehicles, getting everything ready for the impact with me and my assistant. Still to the day of the storm, people didn't heed the warning. It was a collective decision by me and my assistant, ultimately me, to put the 56 firemen and police officers' lives in danger to be able to save these 108 people that were going to stay behind during this storm that was starting to brace down. All the other departments on the island started evacuating, police, fire, rescue, and ultimately I made the decision to keep these people's lives, the first responders, under my supervision to keep their lives safe. As the night of the storm happened, things were thrown at us that we didn't know. Only could think that how bad it did get that night of the storm is so unclear to me and so clear because it feels like a dream as going into 2 years now. The night of the storm I can remember, it was about 8 o'clock at night. We had been wet from 4 o'clock to 8, 911 calls coming in from different parts of the coast, from Manalocan all the way to the edge of Island Beach State Park. I guess it was about 8 o'clock at night. I finally hit the bottom point to where we had a fire in the firehouse because of the water coming in, and we had to evacuate everybody to the top level. At that point it had gotten so bad that on the last rescue, which is noted with the police chief in the truck with me, a piece of the boardwalk came off in the high water vehicle that I was driving and had almost flipped the truck over. So we had taken it back to the firehouse, and now I gave the all clear to everybody to batten down hatches and waiting. At that point in time, we had laid down to go to sleep for a little while in the chief's office, which was my office, and one of the police department members had come over and says, "We have a 911 call, 3-month-old and 5 people trapped in an attic." And I looked over at my assistant, and he said, "Let's get dressed." So at that point in time, I would only take myself and my assistant, because we were, if I was going to put somebody in harm's way, it was going to be me. So I had gotten to the 1 deuce and a half, and he had gotten to follow, and we had turned up one of the roads, and it was impassable. I turned up another road, and he had gotten to the house before me. At that time the people were in the second level, and the 3-month-old had been thrown from the second level into one of the firemen's arms. I'm not sure which one we had caught him. At that point in time, there was one more rescue going on. We had rescued those 5 people and put them in the back of the high water vehicle. There was one more rescue on Pelican Island, which was called in, and I figured while I was out, ironically it's where I live, while I was out, we were going to do this last rescue. at that point in time, I had received the call and had started heading that way. The lowest point in the entire storm was in Pelican Island, where I had lived, and it became clear to me that I wasn't sure if I was going to make it to the house or not. We made it to the house, but by the time when we made it to the house and rescued the 2 people in the attic and the dog, the truck got stuck. Got stuck in I think it was a manhole or a ditch. I had evacuated the people out of the truck to the other deuce and a half across that was waiting, that followed me with my assistant in it on the other street. By that time, I was the only one left in the truck, but I had to wait for the truck to fill up with water until I could push my way out because of the pressure. And as I got caught in the current, I had figured out when I looked up that I was in front of my own house that was gone.
So you, as you were rescuing people and as you were in the midst of this surreal situation, you looked up and realized your home was destroyed.
My home was gone. And not given any at all care or anything at that point was them pulling me back into the truck in the passenger seat, my assistant screaming at me, "Don't ever do that again," and then me going back to the firehouse and going back to sleep for a couple hours to wake up the next morning and to find out that, yeah, it happened and we were trapped. You know, the bridge was impassable and Manahawkin Bridge gave out. So at that time, all the 100 people that we had saved or so up in the courtroom, you know, and the 56 firemen and everybody still fell on my shoulders to be able to take care of them, wet clothing, whatever it was. So at that point, I did what I did as a first responder, and as it was says, like Russ says, it was automatic. I did that for 18 hours a day for 3 months.
I want to bring in Dr. Russ for standing now because, Sam, you met Dr. Russ just weeks before Sandy, and with all these incredible emotions and all of the pressure that you felt and all of the things you felt from the time Sandy hit until now, it has changed your life in many, many ways, as it has so many others. But in your situation, it probably has changed your life in a way that most people wouldn't realize. So, Dr. Russ, let's talk a little bit about the impact all of these emotions have had on it.
Well, Sam could certainly answer that question better than, or discuss that better than I can. It was kind of complicated by the fact that I lost my house also. So we could, commiserate with each other because we were both at, but clearly what was most notable was you turn on the television and hear this guy is being hailed as the hero, and then I would see him walk into my office and I would see the person that people watching TV or reading the papers never saw. The human who only, however capable he is and however knowledgeable, like all humans, we only have so much. And I'm seeing the guy who still doesn't yet realize, because as terrible as it was, this is what he's prepared for. It was kind of like, it was kind of like the biggest show, if you will. Not that it was a show. And I'm looking at him trying to go, but Sam, what about the cost it's had on you? And he didn't really want to hear that at that point, because not only was it at odds with what his task was, and I think it's really important, and I learned this from working with Sam. First responders are a different breed. You put something in front of them and they do it. They don't sit and think about it. They don't really weigh what's going to be the impact on me. I mean, a fireman who runs into a fire, would we do that? Probably not, but to him it's second nature. So it was really one of the biggest tasks I had on my clinical plate of how do you get this man to guard his own being? And oh, by the way, not only are you the fire chief and the head of emergency management and a human being, but you're a father and you're a husband. And oh, on top of that, you have no house. You're homeless. And now you got all these media trying to come in and spin their own stories, and they're starting to tell you what happened rather than knowing what happened. So it was really, I think Sam and I formed an unusual bond, very different than I have with most of my patients, because he got so unraveled by the scenario, by the, how all the publicity, by FBI investigations into things, that because he was so central, whether he had any reason to be involved or not, he became involved. And, if we cut to the chase, and I hope Sam would agree with me, what's really nice is certainly in the time that I've known Sam, and from what he's reported about the time before I knew him, I think Sam is probably the healthiest he's ever been today. I only look, and I hope this is just one step in a many-step, progression of how he gets healthier and healthier. But I can't even begin to explain it as well as he could.
Sam, with the weight of the world on your shoulders and all the responsibility that you bear, starting with the storm, was there one moment where you said to yourself, I really have to start looking inward and take care of myself? Was there a revelation moment, or how did that happen?
Well, it happened when, after everything was said and done and everybody's life was manageable after probably that January, after about 3 months, and then I sat on the couch and it was quiet. And I said,
And Sam, and the first time it was quiet in 3 months. I mean, literally 90 days of chaos.
yeah, I finally said, well, who's coming to rescue me? And honestly, that's when it just started unraveling, because doing the emergency management and the fire and all that stuff was easy. The 3 months, the rescuing, easy for me. The quiet time is when it became a problem. Well, who's going to help me now? Phone a friend. I couldn't phone a friend. All my friends had lost the same thing I lost. And that's when Russ came into the picture and equation, because he was my voice of reason on what do I do at this point. And, when you can't be the hero and the victim all in the same day, which I happen to be both. But I took the victim part a little less traumatic than I actually should have. Somebody once asked me a question, it wasn't too long ago, what was the absolute thing you could change, the worst thing you did in your career that you could change? And selfishly, I would say is probably not attend to myself and my family the day after the storm, and put other people's lives and other people's needs in front of mine.
Sam, do you think that's any different? I mean, a lot of people who take their work very, seriously, especially if their work involves other people. Do you think it was just your version of that? Because I know as a doctor, I look back and say, oh my God, there were times I was eating with my family and the answering service called. And I kind of went, oh, I've got to go to the hospital. And my kids needed me. I mean, so was it different?
It was different because it was life-altering, right in your face, no home, no clothes, nobody to turn to. It wasn't like, you know what, I'm going to step out of my shoes for a couple minutes and re-enter my family's life. I had a 9-year-old who's 9 now and a 14-year-old over the last 2 years who have changed bus stops 4 times. I still am not home. They tell me December 20th my house is going to be rebuilt. I don't even believe them. But here's the ironic part. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, Sandy. Because up till today, I couldn't have told you, how I felt, or even why I felt it, or even being the same person that I am, that just letting a guy's trying to make a left at a traffic light, and me just letting him go and feeling better about that. I was never in touch with my feelings, if that can make any sense.
Well, so are you saying you're calmer and more level-headed now than you used to be?
Absolutely. And, from all the media and me getting validated that night, and me saying to myself, would I have changed anything? And everybody wanting to have briefs on what could we have changed during the night of Sandy or during the response to Sandy. Me and my assistant say it every day, not one thing. Nobody died, nobody got hurt under my watch and his watch. Nothing could be changed.
Sam, when you say everybody, just share who some of the people asking you these questions were, just so people can understand how significant this really was.
Well, I mean, the people asking the questions were high power officials, state government, federal government, and yeah, I wouldn't change one thing. And even to validate more is that after I have been portrayed in the media and on Google, whatever you would like to call it, at the end of the day, I became an emergency management specialist in my career now, and have been, once again validated that night I did do the right thing. I shouldn't have thought I did anything different.
But did you go through a phase where you weren't so sure if you did the right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, 6 months minimum.
Absolute minimum. I think it was longer than that. This man is being very modest now. Not only was the task during the storm and the immediate post-storm period beyond probably what any of us can imagine, certainly what anybody who doesn't live here could imagine, because they think this is all old history, and anyone who lives here knows that's anything but the case. But his wife, as he knew it, got unraveled in just about every conceivable way, professionally and personally, as a result of this.
I watch these documentaries that tell you that, of the storm of that night, and everybody loves to see that, but the real story is the day after, the months after, the years after. I take all these people's, unbelievably, the armed forces, the first responders, this PTSD that I never thought could even be something that would affect anybody. And boy, I feel very sorry because I didn't see it. But, the nights of sleepless nights and not having the tools to fix it, because I wanted to just put it out like a fire. But not having the right tools was the main problem of how to fix the PTSD and the thoughts of, didn't I do? What could I have did? The should have, would have, could haves. And that's where Russ came into the picture of doing it. And I never wanted to be the forefront of a hero or the publicity or anything. I always hung back. But really what I'm trying to get out and try to tell people is that everybody's still struggling, and the new normal is different. Everybody's level of being able to tolerate things are different around here, and we are still so scarred.
Sam, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us and your relationship with Dr. Russ. As a final question, I'd just like to ask you to address people who feel some of the emotions that you have felt but are hesitating to reach out to get help from someone. What advice would you give those people?
The advice would be is that you may not even know you're feeling it. Reach out to your family to see if they see a difference in you, because you could have blinders on that you don't even see the emotions that you're feeling. The late night wake up late nights, the telltale signs. I mean, you could read the description on the side of a prescription bottle that says you're going to have all these symptoms, but you really got to get professional help, because they're the ones with the tools in the toolbox to fix you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Russ, thank you.
Thanks for having me.